Welcome back to another live and Amplified Livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet. We're back at it again with another amazing podcast. We are right smack dab in the middle of our 25 Days of Christmas, a podcast marathon, a podcast series, however you want to describe it, celebrating Christmas music. And today we have a very special guest. We have Annie Vander. How's it going today?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing really well. It's finally getting to be nice here in Texas where it's not too hot, not too cold.
Nice.
And, hopefully it'll stay like this for a little while before it gets blistering cold. But living in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area,
I was going to say, I'll take your cold.
Right? It's I've grown soft. So like we were talking before this, I grew up in the Chicagoland area. And I used to have thick skin. I used to be able to, when I was in college, it'd be like November. I'd be outside with a long shirt on, and it'd be like 20 degrees. Not a big deal. Now,
Grew up in the Chicago area, and I was always involved in music as a kid. And then as an adult, I put it down for a bit, had a business, did a bunch of stuff, had an accident, lost a business, whole bunch of bad stuff happened. And somehow I stumbled on music and ended up down in Nashville recording music after all this crazy stuff happened. And I don't know, it's been kind of a whirlwind. So I don't know. It's sometimes fate just kind of grabbed me and brought me back to where I should be. So that's a little bit about Annie Vander.
Gotcha. Fair enough. So I'm going to ask this question. I know the answer. I know what it was like growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. But maybe you can give a little bit of a different perspective being on, you said the west side, right? Yeah.
Well, I live in the west suburb. I grew up on the south side.
Okay.
I just live in the far west suburbs now.
Gotcha. So for you, what was it like growing up in the south suburbs of Chicago?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. It's a multicultural place for sure. It's exciting. There's always something to do. And we definitely have the 4 seasons and we're entering into the coldest one. So, I don't know. Like I said, it was fun. There was always something to do. And Christmas time, since we're talking about Christmas, one of my best memories was doing the, I don't know if you did it growing up. They had like I don't know what they called it, but it was like Christmas Around the World at Museum of Science and Industry. And all the different trees and stuff like that. So,
We've done several different class field trips in elementary school and middle school, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's something magic about, even though it's cold, there's something magic about the streets in downtown Chicago. Like maybe because they took us to like the Mag Mile when we were younger, and we'd see all the Christmas windows decorated and stuff like that. So I don't know. There's just something special about the lights and stuff down there for me.
Yeah, it was always we didn't do it every year, but like getting the opportunity to go to Chicago, go to downtown Chicago, and just kind of go down to like Millennium Park or Grant Park?
Grant Park, yeah.
Yeah, going down there and just kind of getting to see the downtown in the Christmas spirit, and there was something very special about it. I 100% agree. So,
yeah. And then as an adult, like when I would go to company parties with my husband and things like that, as a girl, you get all dressed up, you have a dress on. And so, like the clothes weren't that warm. And I just remember, feet sticking out of like just the dress shoes, and you just have this little coat, but the music is just a little more bright and special. And I don't know, it's it's, I don't know, magical
Yeah.
to me.
Fair. It's really interesting because, Chicago, like you said, is a very multicultural, like even when you sprawl out into the suburbs and you're in like even as far south as like Lansing, where I grew up, or as far out as Joliet, like just the multitude of different things like that you got to experience, and being aware of things outside of like traditional Christmas, like,
Yeah.
being aware of like what Hanukkah was, or Kwanzaa, just kind of having all these different holidays that were a thing, and still obviously still are a thing, but it was a really eye-opening experience, and a well-rounded. I don't know why I stumble every time I say well-rounded,
That's okay.
but
I
yeah.
think there's a lot of things that growing up in Chicago, or I would imagine, because I've really only lived in the Chicago area, is like there's a lot you take for granted until like, especially like when I did radio tour and stuff like that over the last couple years, and then just traveling as an adult other places, and meeting people in different parts of the country, you realize, I don't know, you take so much for granted when you have it all right there. I think as a child, you just think like, oh, well, you just do this, but not everybody has that. And it's, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So, you said you kind of started with cross music professionally later on, after you'd gone through some trials and tribulations. Do you want to kind of dive in on like what led you to music, or you just kind of want to? Yeah.
Sure. I don't mind.
Okay.
So basically, like I said, I started music, technically learning about it in the 5th grade, like so many kids do. They throw the instruments at you and have you try a bunch of different ones. And I picked up clarinet. That became my thing. Then I got into, I was the kid who I wanted to learn every single instrument. So I learned quite a few, but clarinet was my main. And then, as I mentioned, as an adult, like at late teenage, early adult years, I used to go out to karaoke bars and I'd do stuff. And in the back of my head, I always wondered, like, what if,
Yeah.
But I went and got a normal, quote unquote, normal job, like so many people, and, met my husband, and, did the responsible stuff. And I worked at different veterinary clinics. I worked with animals for probably about 20 some years as a veterinary technician. And then I went off and started my own business. And in 2019, I fell down. I shattered my wrist. It was 60 below here in Chicago area. I shouldn't say, it probably was in Chicago too. This January 30, 2019, to be exact. My husband and I were leaving for a Southern Caribbean cruise. Our bags were literally at the door. The Uber was on the way to come and get us. And we're like, we should take a key to the neighbor's house just in case the garage door doesn't open, pet sitter's car doesn't start, and all this stuff. So, and I'm like, let's just walk. And my husband literally says, no, it's too dangerous, even though, because we have pretty big lots where we're at. It's pretty country out by me.
Yeah.
So he gets in the car and we drive there, and I was walking probably a little bit too fast, and I took 3 steps, down I go. And then he starts yelling at me. He goes, get up. And with a choice word in between. Yeah. And like thinking, why are you yelling at me? Because I said, just let me lay down a second. It's 6 below. And I said, I want to lay down. So he probably knew right away. Needless to say, I ended up in the ER. Cruise did not happen. But then in the meantime, I had already started my own business at this point, and I had to call some of my clients. I was doing pet sitting, dog walking, dog training. I had a staff of people working for me. And a long part of this story, cut really short, is I ended up losing that business. I developed a lot of complications. I developed chronic regional pain syndrome, which I'm fortunate enough to be in remission from. It's a pretty rare it's like a neurologic pain disorder.
Mhm.
And so I'm in remission from that. And I had no idea what I was going to do because, like, business gone. I didn't know if I was going to live a normal life, blah, 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 blah. And so when all this started in January of 2019, I finally feel better in November 2019. I get a job at a door and window company in November. So
Mhm.
fast forward a few months, we're in March of 2020.
Yep.
COVID. Yeah. So
Yeah.
don't even need to say. So I had some time off, not too much because at a door and window company, in the construction industry, we were deemed essential workers.
Mhm.
But in the time that I had off, I got in touch with an artist coach in Nashville. And I told him I wanted to start diving back into music theory and I
Nice.
wanted to learn to play instruments that I didn't have to, wasn't a wind instrument. I wanted to be able
Mhm.
to accompany myself. The rest is history. I started writing my own music and
Yeah.
that what if it just kind of, I don't know, one thing led to another. He introduced me to my producers, become an amazing friend of mine. I love my coach and his now wife. He recently got married.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just been introduced to so many amazing people.
Yeah.
Um, I could go on and on and on, but
Yeah.
yeah, I feel very, very lucky.
Yeah, for sure. And the cool thing about living, especially in the south suburbs of Chicago,
Yeah.
is if you need to get down to Nashville, you can do it relatively quickly. Like
Yeah.
if you're driving and you don't have to go through like the city and all that stuff, you can get there pretty quickly. But you know, plus Chicago itself has got its own thriving music scene.
Oh,
If
for sure. For sure.
Yeah, well, if you're willing to drive into the city, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the coolest experiences I had, even just starting out, I felt really lucky. I ended up playing the foundation room at House of Blues,
Mhm.
and I was invited as a guest artist there. And they wanted me to tell the story of my first radio hit falling into Nashville. And it basically was about, that was
Yeah,
written kind of, about the accident.
yeah,
You wouldn't know it was unless you knew the story.
yeah.
But this was like a gospel choir, Grammy winning, I think they're Grammy winning, a gospel choir.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were amazing. And the whole room, I remember it was the first time in front of a pretty decently big crowd. I sang the first chorus
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, y'all know the chorus now. I said, you can join in and you can sing with me. And I'm like, either I'm going to look like a fool or, or everyone's going to join in. And those people took it to church and it was just
Nice.
like a whole new spin on it. And I, every once in a while, will go back and look at some video that people got from the crowd from that. And it was just, they put the Chicago spin on falling into Nashville. Like
Right?
they put the soul into it. And I was like, wow, that was really neat. So, but that's
That
one of the, it's a Chicagoism,
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like Chicago's really good. Like the Chicago pride is real. That's a very real thing. Like,
it is. It
you know,
is.
so obviously November or March 2020 does, what it does. And that kind of, it's so hard because I'm so afraid of saying the word COVID because
Don't
it
want it to come
kills.
back.
I don't want it to come back, and B, if like search engines and stuff have gotten so smart, if you say that word, it's like,
Oh,
oh, well, but it's like in context, it's like it's not anything bad we're saying, so
right,
it is
right.
what it is. So that kind of sparked your interest when you first started pursuing music in 2020, and you're starting to take it professionally. Who are you listening to? Who are some of your influences as far as like who you looked at when you like started exploring who you wanted to be as a musician?
It's funny because I feel like it's ever evolving. But
Mm,
when I started, it was like I listened to more modern country. I like Keith Urban and Maren Morris
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. But like I have there's so many artists. I think growing up in Chicago, I really didn't start listening like really listening to country music until more recent years. I would listen to Pink, Lady Gaga, and a lot of the mainstream R&B stuff, and and like I said, in some country things, but like the I don't want to say the really big artists, but in country, but now what is, oh my gosh, I just totally drew it. Lainey Wilson. How could I say that? She wasn't, when I started, I don't think she was quite as, where she is now. It's, I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I feel like I pulled influences from so many different people.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I can't really pinpoint and say just one.
Fair enough. Very fair. Because it's interesting. You brought up growing up in Chicago that you didn't really listen to country music. And I felt very much the same. Like, it just wasn't something that we listened to where I grew up. Like, my aunt and my cousin, they listened to a little bit of country music, but anytime I was in the car with them, it was always like the Dixie Chicks or, it was something to that effect. So it was like uber mainstream stuff. And it's like, maybe a little Rascal Flatts in there, but other than that, that was about it. And that's what I thought.
Yeah. And if you could say influences, it probably was Shania Twain, Dixie Chicks, now that I think about it, and Rascal Flatts. Dolly was, I didn't really even listen. I mean, I knew 9 to 5, Jolene, but that really wasn't on the radio. So it probably was more just in, Maren Morris at the time when I was getting going, she was one of the uber mainstream ones then. So
yeah, for sure. But hasn't it been fun over the last couple of years, like to really dive in deep on some of these artists that have been around for a really long time and we're
totally
just getting introduced to them?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because now it's like, when I'm at work, there's some people there that, they really knew country music before. And some of the other ones, they still don't. They're like, I don't know. It's probably what I was like some years ago. And they're like, oh, country, like who listens to that? And now that's pretty much all I listen to.
It was because as we're recording this, the Spotify 2023 wrapped up things came out, kind of telling you your breakdown of what you listen to.
Yeah.
And all my top artists were all country artists, but it says my top genre was like hip hop or something.
Really?
I'm like, that makes no sense to me. But
maybe it's coming from Chicago.
Probably.
But I also feel like with some of my music though, because like my latest Christmas song, I feel like when I sent it to my publicist and other people on my team, I was like, this isn't really country. I mean, it's technically, but then other people here in Chicago, like my friends and stuff, they're like, how could you say that's not country?
Yeah.
But I felt like I wanted to bring a little bit of a Chicago vibe to the country scene with that song. So
fair enough.
That's how I felt anyway.
Fair enough. Perfectly when to segue. That's what I was building towards. Oh, so you got a new Christmas song out. We just teased this. Can't Nobody Kringle. What's kind of the story behind this song?
It doesn't really, there's no specific story behind it. Okay. It kind of really is like, I just wanted a song that, as we're talking about Chicago, that kind of gives somebody that feeling, like that magic feeling, like you would understand being a Chicago, past Chicagoan, like the minute you step foot into the city for the first time and that Christmas air just comes alive, like, so like when you turn the song on, like that visual, just, I wanted that to just be there for somebody, because there is something special about, to me at least, like being with your favorite people at Christmas, and especially that one, like when you go to a holiday party with, the person you're with or whatever. And I'm kind of on a mission, like every year, to create a new Christmas tune. And when I got in the room to write this with my producer and Corey Lee Barker, who is known as Christmas Corey on Facebook, and he has a lot of different Christmas placements. I felt super lucky to even be able to write with him and David. So it's like David said, "Oh my gosh, check out this hook," and he already had a lot of it, and he was just like, and he's saying that, and I was just like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "We have to do this." So yeah, so the rest is history. Yeah. I don't really. I sh- that's a good question. Uh-huh.
Woman, it's a nice
Yeah.
little compact deal, and it gives it brand new life. But then again, Christmas music, you kind of get new life every year out of the song because you're kind of reintroducing it. So
And that's kind of how I felt with King of Christmas. And I've never experienced the new life of any song really.
yeah,
Because being a new artist, number one, unless somebody picks up your music and it's been
yeah,
sitting on a shelf already for years, and then if it's suddenly like, what is it, Jody Messina had this song
mhm,
Heads Carolina that
yeah,
was redone, and then her original they re-released it to radio, which how cool is that for her, like so neat. So like when King of Christmas was put on a few playlists again that I wasn't expecting this year, and I was like, oh wow, it's like, well, that's an old, in my head I'm like, this is an old song, it's from
yeah,
last year, but it's Christmas again.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
which is exciting too, because as an artist you have like, when you release it, it's so short lived.
Mhm,
So to have it come back again, it's really neat.
yeah.
So
I think people like Dean Martin and Mariah Carey and artists like that have really shown that Christmas music can have long lasting legs. Because, like, I mean, Mariah Carey's been living off of that one song around Christmas time for what, 15, 20 years at this point?
at least, oh my gosh. And I've heard, I don't know the numbers, but I've
Yeah.
heard, she makes quite a lot of money here at
That,
Christmas. So, I mean, I think if you have just the right song and people resonate with it, I mean, you never know what can
mhm,
happen.
yeah,
So, yeah.
100%. 100%. So with Can't Nobody Kringle, did you do a music video for this song, or was that something that you thought about if you didn't?
I'm thinking about it, not this year.
Mhm.
I'm still independent, so some things are, you have to kind of pick and choose a little
There,
bit more.
yeah,
Yeah. So, but I feel like, like with the right Christmas songs down the road, I probably will do a video at some point, with just the right ones.
mhm,
So I feel like with Christmas, you always get the chance to,
yeah,
like you said, some songs, new life is kind of breathed into them. So we'll see. We'll
yeah.
see.
Yeah, for sure. And how long had you been sitting on Can't Nobody Kringle? Is this a song you've been sitting on for a little bit, or is it a newer song that you've written over the last like couple months?
We wrote it in August
Okay,
of this year, so
gotcha.
it's terribly old. I sat on it really only from, we recorded it, I want to say in October.
Hmm.
Um, so it was still pretty to get it out and out packaged up out the door, ready to go. That was really kind of pushing it.
Hmm.
But yeah, but it was written because I was like, it was one of those things too. I was like, do I just push King of Christmas again, or do I do a new one? And and it was David, my producer. He's like,
Yeah,
I think every year you should just give your fans a Christmas song. And
yeah.
I'm like, that's really not a bad idea. So
No, it's not. It's, especially if you kind of find the niche that you want as far as telling your stories or your Christmas stories, like whether it's, telling stories about Christmas experiences as a child, or, like whatever it is. If it's, I think it's definitely a lane where you could build like a longer story in parts, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, so Can't Nobody Kringle out now. Anybody that wants to listen to it, it's out on Spotify, all that fun stuff. Since this is a Christmas podcast, I have some very specific Christmas questions for you.
Okay.
So, this has been
Anna's naughty list.
Nope, you're good. You're 100% good. This has been a fun question to ask because most people give the exact same response, at least initially. What is your favorite must-watch Christmas movie? Okay. That is okay. That is a very good movie. It's very Chicago in its ways. Yeah, very Chicago in its ways. Have you watched 8-Bit Christmas yet? 8-Bit Christmas, like 8-bit, like 8, like the letter or the number 8 and then BIT. So it's up on HBO Max, I think is the streaming platform that it's on. And it's about a kid that grew up in the 80s in Batavia, Illinois. And it's basically a Christmas story, but in the 80s. And instead of a Red Ryder, he wants a Nintendo. So it's a very good film. Like it's not in my top 10 yet, but it's slowly working its way there. So yeah, it's a good one to check out. And then growing up, what is your fondest memory during Christmas? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair. Fair.
She just had something. Christmas was her absolute favorite time of year. And she was just the joy that she had and just the excitement that built around Christmas Eve. It was literally the moment we were pulling up to her house. We just wait anticipation of the whole night to begin. So yeah, that's my favorite.
I had similar grandma setups. Didn't call them grandma close or grandma far because it was usually to distinguish it, grandma with the straight hair or grandma with the curly hair. And
yeah, well, again, it's kind of similar concept.
Yeah, and at least to my friends, because none of them knew the difference, and it was like, is it the one with the curly hair, or the straight hair? And if it was the one with the curly hair, that grandma was nice. If it's the one with the straight hair, not so nice. At least according to my friends. So,
oh no.
So, but yeah. That's the story of that. So, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat. If anybody wants to check out your music or any shows or anything like that, where's the best place to find you?
I have a website, LNAMusicReview.com. That I will usually have the latest things going on there, and that links to all of the streaming links as well.
Yeah.
And then I'm on all the regular stuff: Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, all the things. So
cool. Yeah. And then how often are you playing shows right now? Are you playing consistently, or is it a little bit slowed down now that it's kind of winter season?
I took a little bit of a break because I was on the road doing a lot of radio touring and things like that. My husband and I just celebrated our wedding anniversary Monday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we have some vacation time set. I just booked a theater show. We're going to finalize a date for February in my hometown. And I'm actually headlining a summer festival, for the first time out in Oskaloosa, Iowa.
Nice.
I'm super excited for that. And I'm getting things lined up for 2024, but I probably won't be super active again until January.
Fair
So
enough. This is kind of a good time to pull back at least a little bit, as long as you're still actively like looking at January. It's like, okay, well, let's figure
yeah.
out. Yeah. So
Well, this is the creative to me. It's like if you don't have the balance between, because I'm
Mhm.
still, being independent, I'm still doing, I've got the line, walking the line
Yeah.
of still working a normal job, and I'm still doing music, both are full time.
Yep.
And you have to find time, the balance for a family too. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So with the family behind you, if, if you prioritize them, it makes it easier for them to help you out later
Yeah.
on too. So,
For sure. For sure.
uh,
Luckily, unluckily for me, a lot of my sister still lives up in Northwest Indiana, and my dad lives down in Florida. So that constant demand to be around them isn't quite there, but it's still like, hey, when are you coming to see me? I haven't seen you in a couple of months. It's like, okay, now I got to figure out the budget to try and fly to Florida or come up to Chicago, that whole thing. So
yeah, I'm sure that's tricky.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me too. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate you for taking the time. And anytime you ever need anything, feel free to reach out. Would love to have you back on and all that fun stuff. So,
Cool. Thanks so much. I
yeah,
really appreciate it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And once again, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will catch you all later.